Yeah, that's fair.
Can you actually, like, is it mutually exclusive?
I would say no. I think the Bible tells us there's one universal church. And there's some we do have like some differences, but I don't think that's like are that essential. There's depending a little bit, and like if you're actually really interested, I'm happy like when we can meet up and you can ask some questions if you want. I'm happy to answer it. Because I do understand it feels sometimes very strange.
Well, it's, did you know that sometimes like say across the church,
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes there's multiple ones in Europe.
What yeah, what fits, yeah. So your background is Eastern Orthodox?
Yes, it's, I'm not really for religious.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of my grandparents on the side and I'm looking so people do some questions.
Yeah.
And it's hard to connect sometimes because you don't have
Yeah. That's really good. And if you like if you ever wanna just actually just meet up and ask questions, like, I'm happy to do that if you're interested. Yes, I don't live too far away. Or you can meet up with Ben. Ben actually lives in upstairs. Here's an apartment and above the church. So he lives here. So we are very close.
if you want to join me,
Sorry?
because I can
Oh no. You don't have to. You can just listen if you want. No worries. You can just sit in it and watch if you want. You don't need you do what you feel.
fascinating.
Mm. That's a great question. I do like NIV because it's good. It's better for the new or the I do like the new translation. Yeah.
Sometimes you compare it like, it's not very
Yeah, it's hard because of course my son doesn't even
Okay, perfect.
read
So good to see you all. So good to see some new faces and some well-known faces. Welcome to Reach North York Church here. It's really, really good to be here. And we want to start with something very unusual today, and that is a financial update. I know that's not what you normally get when you come to a church for the first time, but we're not a normal church in many different ways, so that's fine. What we actually are is we are a young church, a small church that really has a vision, a purpose. We want to be a church that reaches out to people. We want to be a church that is a community of people coming together of all different backgrounds. We try to have a community that supports each other, that grows together, where we can be here for each other. Part of that, of course, is finances as well, because everything you see, everything we put together, everything we can do as a group, we want to somehow be able to do, even financially. So, a quick background, if that's working. We have a big budget. If you don't know it yet, I'm open to give more details. Later, ask me after the service if you have questions in detail. Basically, Jörg and I are two pastors, missionaries being sent here by a missions organization called Lebensel Mission. And Lebensel, who's kind of like the umbrella of our church, has this budget for us. It says, there's two people here that cost a lot of money, but they're paying for it. So we are not paying as a church for that right now. Talking about goals, someone else. There's a building that also belongs to Lebensel Canada, and we do a lot of renovations. Like some people might be sitting later in the nursery, and I just did some flooring this morning, so it's not fully done, but you see there's some progress going on. And everything that is about the building, like we use electricity, water, we renovate, we need a new furnace. That is paid also by Lebensel, different country, but by our organization. And then there's a small budget left that we said we want to take care of that. As a church, together, that's how we want to start, and I call it Reach Church. That's what we do. In detail, that means we split it up, did some planning, did budgeting last year, and came up with, okay, we spent about 24,000, 23 to 24. Part of it is administration, so buying stuff for the office, or like daily things that you need, the website, everything costs money. So that's a bigger chunk. Worship for Sunday services, we're printing out some lyric sheets and stuff, also something for new music instruments. And then there's two big blocks that is fellowship and community events. And that means events where we can come together. So that is the small groups that we have. That is different events like the Murder Mystery Night. Or if we do something big outside in the community or are part of it, that is this budget. We also said we want to give 10% of what is given to our church back into missions somewhere, to invest and reinvest it into organizations here in the neighborhood and worldwide. So that's where this comes from. And then there's a last huge block called Making Reach Hope. When we moved in here, so Julia and I are living upstairs. If you didn't know that, my wife Julia and I are living here, and we try to change things slowly. And there's the budget for renovations, and there's the budget for buying new chairs, buying new tables, buying new things that make this building, our Reach building. And that is this Making Reach Hope. Part of that is also the volleyball net that we bought, or the canopy outside. So things for sitting outside or having time, community time, outside, inside. And we said, okay, we want to invest in that to make this place our home. More and more. That's how this money came together. And now I throw on some numbers because we want to have transparency as like something that's important for us, so you know what's going on and why I'm saying, hey, there's a gift button in the end, just as a spoiler. In the beginning of the year, we said, okay, we're spending about 24,000. Then COVID didn't go away. We had lockdown, stay-at-home orders, everything, and in the end, by the end of October, we only spent almost 10,000, not even. So there's money left. We thought the 24,000 comes together from our organization giving us money, from Reach savings that we wanted to invest into the building, like into making this our home, our church home, and from what you all together give donate, in donations, where we can, where you support this church as your home church or as the church you're coming to on Sunday. And we thought 13,000 might be a good number. In fact, we almost reached that number already, having 12,000 in giving. So thank you so much for everyone who's supporting this church and everything that we do. And we have almost reached our goal. We're super close to that. We got some money from Liebensaal, Germany. We always get the money that we actually need. So the 4,000 that were estimated are not fully needed, so we get what we need. And from over the last years, there's also some older people that are supporting this young church, have been supporting for 5 years already. There's a saving budget of about 14,000. And we said we use 7,000 and keep the rest as savings for bigger investments. Basically, I wanted to show you that to say, hey, we think about what we do with money. We have a plan and we want to make a new budget for the next year. COVID hit, so that means we will have some money left that we want to reinvest, mainly to make this building even more our home. The next part, for example, is the office downstairs. That it doesn't feel like such a cold office, but to make it more homey, to sit together, to feel comfortable there. We want to take next steps also to say, okay, 10% will always go into missions. Even if more comes in, 10% will be reinvested. And we also want to, that's the wrong direction, take next steps to say, maybe at some point, as a church, in administration, for example, we also have a small rent right now that we pay to Liebensaal. Maybe we can increase that over the years to give more back for the building, and as we grow, also to say, can we support the staff? Can we support a pastor here? Just as a long-term goal to say, hey, finances has purposes to grow and establish this church even deeper. Basically, we have more money this year than we need. We haven't reached our goal, but we have more than we need because of COVID. But for the next year, we then want to step even more into like this field of trusting God with finances to make a new budget that is not standing yet, but it will be a little higher because we saw we can reach that goal. So we want to take the next step. And if you say, hey, I want to support that, or are you here for today to say, I have no idea, talk to me? Or if you say, I do that right away, maybe after the service, so Jörg is not too disturbed if everyone takes out the phone. It's actually quite simple. On our website, reachnorthyork.com, you have it on the back of the lyric sheet, and there's also a QR code to just get to it right away. There's the small gift button down here. And if you click that, you get to this page that opens up. And you can easily just go through the whole process with your credit card. If you want a different way or have any questions, come up to me later. I wanted to present that so we all know what we're talking about and where money is coming from that we throw around. We use it with a purpose. We have goals. We want to make this place more of our home as a church. And I'm really thankful for everything that you've given so far and how we can stand together as a church and grow. I want to praise God for that in prayer and then hand over to you. Dear God, thank you so much that even that is part of a church that we support each other in every different way, that we can support each other emotionally, talking to each other, carrying each other in our troubles and challenges, that we can pray for each other. And thank you that we can also help with finances, to say, okay, we want to have a place where we can meet and where we can invite people and feel comfortable, where we feel like it's a community that's our home, and it's a place that feels like a home where we feel comfortable and safe. And I pray that all of this is not just so we feel better, but so we can experience a little more what you want to give us as you promise us that we have a home with you. I thank you so much for everyone who's here right now, that we can celebrate the Sunday service together, learn something new about you, experience you in a new way, and I pray that our hearts can be open to really listen to what you want to tell us today. Thank you that you're here. Thank you for this church and everyone who's here. Amen.
you, Ben.
Before we're going to worship together, I want to introduce this new sermon series. I spoke a little bit about this last week already. We're going to have, over the next 5 weeks, actually, we're going to have a look at the book of Esther in the Old Testament. So the Bible is divided into these two books. It's basically before Jesus and then after, or with him. And there are two books in the Bible who are named after women. And one is Esther and one is Ruth. We've done a series on Ruth a while ago, like a few years ago. But the book of Esther is a very interesting book. And I don't know, we had it in the church mail, and maybe you had the chance to start reading the first chapters. And this book is interesting because it's the name of God doesn't show up. And I still believe there's a lot we can learn about who God is, how he works. But today, we're also going to talk a little bit about that, but today I want to maybe take a little bit away from what I think sometimes is a romantic way of looking at this book and this story. Because I grew up as a Christian, I grew up in the church, so I'm into like kids' church, and I heard this story, and there's also some movies out there, and it feels very wholesome. And I think when we actually read this, we will realize this isn't a nice story in a lot of ways. The things that are happening are hard, are difficult. To give you a little bit of an understanding, the time this story is placed, this story happened, is during the height of the Persian Empire. If you are like me, you know it's a great time to read history, to read about history. If you watch the movie 300, this is the time. The Persians are the most powerful empire probably that has ever existed until this time. They had taken over from the great Babylonian Empire, and this Babylonian Empire is important because under their great king Nebuchadnezzar, they had defeated the people of Israel, first the northern kingdom of Israel and then the southern kingdom of Judah, and Nebuchadnezzar had conquered Jerusalem. And that was a devastating thing for the people of Israel, God's people, because God had this beautiful story with them. They had been in slavery in Egypt, and he had led them out and brought them in this promised land. And so this land was very important for them. And then they had turned away from God, and things had gone downhill. And this is kind of like the worst that can happen if you're really attached to your land, because this is what you think is your divine inheritance, and all of a sudden you are defeated. And what the Babylonians did to try to set up in a way that nobody would rebel against them in a really threatening way, they would disperse people in their empire, and the Persians would keep doing it. So what happened, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, would be spread out in this massive kingdom. I have a map, if you can see the map. So this kingdom spreads from Greece in the west, around the Mediterranean, go through what today is traditionally the Middle East, Iraq, Iran, all the way to the Hindu Kush into India. So this is massive. And then all of a sudden you have these Jewish people who were spread out all around. And at the head of this kingdom sits the Persian king. And at the time of this story, of the story of Esther, there's a very famous king, King Xerxes. He's the one trying to go into Greece later, if you know 300. And if you want to talk about that time period with me later, you can. I love it. But Xerxes, and this is how, if you read the chapters, like this is how the introduction to the story starts, is the description of how powerful this person is. Probably the most powerful person at the time in the world. He is king over 127 provinces, satraps, and he has everything you could ever imagine. He has it at his fingertips. And because of that, he thinks it's a good idea to show his wealth and his power, and he has a party. And he doesn't just have a small party, he has a party for 180 days. That feels long. I feel like would need a break. But so he has a 180 days party and brings people in, like the nobles and important people from all around the empire. And after 100 days, he sends them home, and he feels like, I need to have an after party. And so he has another party for 7 days, just with the people that are closest to him, that live in the capital of Susa. Susa is here. And at the end of these 7 days, surprise, surprise, everybody's drunk. And then the king has this idea to call for his wife, the queen, Queen Vashti. She's having her separate party. In his drunken way, he thinks this is a good idea to bring the queen over. And I read up on this, and it seems to be that this wasn't unusual, that when things got a little out of hand and the man got really drunk, that they would call for women. Usually, it wouldn't be their wives, it would be like some dancers and concubines. But he calls for his wife and says, come wearing your crown. The early interpretation of this and the early Jewish interpreters, the way they see it when they look at how it's worded, it seems to be actually what the king does is he calls her to just wear the crown. Naked. And then here it comes. The queen hears this and says, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to put myself in this position to be in front of this group of drunken men, to be objectified by them. And she says no. This is where the story starts, and this is wild. Queen Vashti makes a choice. And I feel like almost as a reader, it seems like a small choice. Honestly, it seems to be very much the right choice. But that kickstarts the story. Because what happens then is, and I'm going to read from Esther 1, starting verse 16, and you should have it on your sheet. Because now, all of a sudden, the king, and this probably hasn't happened in a long time, someone had said no to him. And he didn't like that. And he felt stunned. And it almost seems like he's so perplexed that he's like, what am I going to do with this? So he asks his friends, his buddies, what are we going to do? And here it comes. Memucan, who's one of these guys, one of his advisors, says this, answered the king and his nobles. Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but also every noble and citizen throughout your empire. Women everywhere will begin to despise their husbands when they learn that Queen Vashti had refused to appear before the king. Before this day is out, the wives of all the king's nobles throughout Persia and Media will hear what the queen did and will start treating their husbands the same way. There will be no end to their contempt and anger. So if it pleases the king, we suggest that you issue a written decree, a law of the Persians and Medes that cannot be revoked. It should order that Queen Vashti be forever banished from the presence of the king, and that the king should choose another queen more worthy than she. When this decree is published throughout the king's vast empire, husbands everywhere, whatever their rank, will receive proper respect from their wives. The king and his nobles thought this made good sense. So he followed Memucan's counsel. He sent letters to all parts of the empire, to each province in its own script and language, proclaiming that every man should be the ruler of his own home and should say whatever he pleases. I'm going to stop there for a moment. This is what probably is called masculine fragility. There's one person that stands up a little bit and they feel like this can never happen again. What we need to know, this is a context where a culture that is already very much the man is the head of the house. But they're so insecure, it seems, that they now say, no, we need to have a law that no wife can say no, can stand up against her husband. This is crazy. This is wild. This is a sexist system. And it's now enshrined into law. And if you know anything about their political system, back then, they repeated all of the time, a law of the Persian and Medes cannot be revoked. And I will come back later, this will be important, but this is now it. This is hard to swallow. I find this really difficult. And what I find even more difficult, because I was reflecting about this and I've never thought about this, what that would mean. Partly because I'm a guy. But it doesn't stop there, because if we continue reading in chapter 2, Xerxes doesn't stop there. But after Xerxes' anger had subsided, he began thinking about Vashti and what she had done and the decree he had made. So his personal attendant suggested, let us search the empire to find beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint agents in each province to bring these beautiful young women into the royal harem at the fortress of Susa. Hegai, the king's eunuch in charge of the harem, will see that they are all given beauty treatments. After that, the young women who most pleases the king will be made queen instead of Vashti. This advice was very appealing to the king, So he put the plan into effect. At that time there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai, son of Jar. He was from the tribe of Benjamin, and he was a descendant of Kish and Shimei. His family had been among those who King Jehoiakim of Judah had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his family and raised her as his own daughter. As a result of the king's decree, Esther, along with many other young women, was brought to the king's harem at the fortress of Susa and placed in Hegai's care. Hegai was very impressed with Esther and treated her kindly. He quickly ordered a special menu for her and provided her with beauty treatments. He also assigned her 7 maids, specially chosen from the king's palace, and he moved her and her maids into the best place in the harem. Esther had not told anyone of her nationality and family background because Mordecai had directed her not to do so. So it doesn't stop there. The king has another idea. His old queen needs to be replaced. And he again gets advice. And this time he gets advice to do this big search. And I think again, for most of my life, I looked at this as like, honestly, it's described like this a lot of the times. This is a big beauty pageant. It's like the imperial beauty pageant. And then you think about this. And then you realize that's a lie. A beauty pageant is something you think you're good looking, you sign up for something and hope you win a prize. Kind of. What is happening here is you have government officials going through the land kidnapping young women. And they're going to check that they're virgins. And it's not surprising that Esther is one of them. Not just because she's good looking and young, no, but also because she belongs to a community, to a group of people that has a hard time advocating for themselves because she was part of a minority. She's so afraid even to even say anything. Like Mordecai says, don't mention that you are one of the Jews. So she's ripped off away from her family with many others to basically put into this beauty prison. And then they're groomed for a year. And not just physically, but psychologically groomed. Because then all of them are going to spend one night with the king. So they have to have sex with this man. And he then chooses one of them and the rest are destroyed. We call that sex trafficking today. That's what it is. There isn't a romantic thing about this. This isn't beautiful or what a great story. Oh, this is so nice. If you're Esther or any of these women, this is extremely traumatizing. Unimaginable. So what do I do with this? And this is the question that I ask myself, and I read this, and I wrestle with this, and it's like, okay, this is the story in the Bible. What do I learn from this? What do I take from this? What do we take from this as a church? Also, this isn't something that is just gone. I was reading about human sex trafficking today. One thing is for sure, there's never been as many people being human trafficked than today in the world. And yes, it especially happens when it comes to sex trafficking, it's especially women. What do we do? And I think what I find so important for us, and as we wrestle with this, with the human, not just history, but with humankind in the world we live in. I want to look at Jesus. If I read this through the eyes of Jesus, what does it compel me to do? What should it compel us to do? And so I need to look at how does Jesus, living in a culture that is very close to what Esther lived in, how did he interact with women? And a very different image appears. I have to think about the story of Jesus meeting a Samaritan woman at a well. Jesus is traveling, and he feels compelled by the Spirit to go to this place to meet this woman. The problem, though, is Jews and Samaritans usually can't go together. They hate each other. But Jesus approaches her. He even offers her living water, offers her renewal of who she is, even though he knows that she has a very checkered past. He shows love and dignity and grace. He listens. He cares. That woman then becomes the first missionary, really, because she is going back into her place and shares, hey, there is a guy that cared for me, even though he knows my past. And he brings all these people out, and they don't really like her because of her reputation. Or there's this one time, a group of religious leaders bring out a woman that they caught in adultery. And it says something. It says something that they're, surprisingly, the guy she was caught in adultery with, he isn't brought up in front of Jesus, it's just her. And maybe he's just a faster runner, but it seems to be they wanted to really get her. And they're ready to kill her. And Jesus shows a lot of grace and affection, and he truly does save her in that moment. He makes them all go away. Well, there is a woman that is often identified as a prostitute who comes into the house of a religious teacher when Jesus is there. And she's so overwhelmed by what Jesus had done for her. She cries, and with her tears, she washes his feet and dries his feet with her hair. And Jesus honors her. is her. So if we look at this story, if we look at the world, if we look at ourselves, and maybe especially for us as guys, as men, if we're committed to be followers of Jesus, we commit to reflect who he is. He laid down our lives. He laid down his life for us so we can be forgiven and transformed. But then he says, then follow me. I show you what you should do because this is what you're made for. So as we start this journey in Esther, and there's going to be many themes that are going to come up in this, we're going to talk about genocide. We're going to talk about God's sovereignty and many things. But I wanted to start here. Because this is the story of a woman that is kidnapped and trafficked. And that's not what God has for women. And if we see where women, where people, where marginalized people especially, are discriminated against, or this has no place in the church and us. James writes in his letter, true religion is to care for the orphans and the widows. We're the two most vulnerable people at that time. Paul writes, hey, there isn't any difference in front of the gospel, in front of Jesus anymore between male and female. Not even between master and slave, between Jew or Gentile. We're called to something different, to a higher standard. So I want to challenge you today, and I wrote it actually very specific later for when we were in our groups to talk about this, but also the last thing is to pray, because I was looking up, hey, what can I do for people in sex traffic? And one of the things that they write, and I looked at this website of this organization called Fight for Freedom. It's a Christian organization here in Toronto. A friend of mine actually works for them, but I hadn't really looked at the website. He says this is where it starts. We pray. We wrestle with that and we come before God with this. So this is my challenge. Start there. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, I'm grateful that that these stories like Esther are in the Bible. That you are not afraid, but that you actually want to bring up these things. Jesus, I thank you for your life, for your example, what it means to be truly human, to live out of love and forgiveness. And you show love and dignity to those that are marginalized, to women, those who struggle in a society, who are pushed aside. And Lord, I pray for myself, and I pray for all of us that we learn to follow you with all that we are. That we speak up for those that can't. We come before you in prayer. we step in where we can. And Lord, I pray that you show us possibilities and that you give us a boldness to step in, to do the work that you call us to do. In your name I pray. Amen.
Feel free to sit or stand. You can sing under your mask. So I have come alive in the strength of heaven. Eyes are open wide in the light of the sun. I have come alive in your grace and mercy. Darkness fades away until there is none. Your light to guide me, your hands to hold me, your presence when I'm alone. Your heart is beating forever with me. Your voice will call me home. May God be everywhere I go. We have come alive to see your beauty, hear the melody of your song. The crisp and open fields you have set before me. In the sight of you, I'm free to run. Your light to guide me, your hands to hold me, your presence when I'm alone. Your heart is beating forever with me. Your voice will call me home. May God be everywhere I go. May God be everywhere I go.
God, there are so many times we feel like we're alone. In times of darkness, it's easy to forget that you're there. It's hard to see you or hear your voice, or even to call your name. Please, Lord, continue to remind us how you chose us, how you always choose us, how you and you told me to just read the first 2 books of Esther and let God guide me. And I was just thinking, when you read part of a book like that and you just read the beginning and you don't look at the whole story at once, you can really focus on just the feelings that are in that one part. And I was just thinking about how Esther must have felt, and just everything that we've talked about and you're talking about, and all of these songs are really just about the fear of that she must have felt, and how much bravery and courage it must have taken to go and leave and go into this place. And the last song that we're going to do, the blessing, is kind of like God rewarding her in the end, and the Jewish people, for her strength and her courage. He will always bless them and keep them.
Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening.
reminder, we're doing our Bible studies at 7 a.m. on Zoom, Tuesday mornings, if you want to join. And then we're back for our second episode in Esther.
Prayer meeting, not Bible.
Oh, prayer meeting. So sorry. I'm just testing you if you're paying attention. Prayer meeting, 7 a.m. Yeah, Bible study, whew, even harder. Yes, so if you can just join us online, and you can also give, as Ben said. Thank you, Ben, and thank you everyone who already has given. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you. And now we're heading into our small groups. So after every service, we usually split up in small groups to chat and go deeper and about what we heard and spoke about today. So I'm going to hand over to you, Julian.
Hey, yeah. Okay, so we have the basement team, which is Ben, Nadia, Ava, Stefan, and Karina. So you're going to go downstairs to the office. We have team nursery, which is Xana, Alexis, Kyle, Michael, Diana, and Sushan. So you guys are going to go to the office. And then the best team, in my opinion, is myself, Yerk, Mikhail, Jasmine, Jessie, and Lena Sophie, and we're going to be in the hallway. If I pronounce anyone's name wrong, please write me an angry email. And if you need me to repeat